Hey everyone, Mrhappy here, and welcome to Host of the Realm. I didn't want to do one because I talk about this stuff a lot, but you know what? The other three horsemen should all be on the same show that gets to air this, so let's give them something to laugh at. Let's sad music, all that junk. Let's do a Host of the Realm for Mrhappy. So what was life like before Final Fantasy XIV? Well, you got to remember that I started playing 14 back in 1.0, but I barely played it. I played it for 2 months when it came out, another like month and a half at some point later down the road, and then like another month maybe. I had my subscription paid, so I got legacy status at some point, and let's just not include that. Let's just kind of go before A Realm Reborn. So I went to college at NJIT, and then eventually took some online courses after I started kind of just feeling uncomfortable physically being at college. I wanted to be home more, so I did online courses for about a year. I was working at a company in New York City. I don't remember what their name was. It was like, it wasn't Qualcomm. It was something com, and it began with a Q. QuickCom, I think it was. I worked there until March of 2013 when Vodafone bought out the company and they cut 2/3 of the staff. So I lost my job, and at that same month, I had actually injured my shoulder. I was doing like insanity in my own workouts, and I was helping my cousin with, training, not really doing the personal training, but we would talk about exercises and workouts, and we would see each other at the gym and help each other out with that stuff. And I pulled my shoulder. I couldn't work out for like 6 to 8 months, and by that point I was already doing Twitch. So things weren't going great for me before Final Fantasy XIV came out. You know, I wasn't losing interest in college. I was like tens of thousands, and still am tens of thousands of dollars in debt. And I had lost my job that was paying for my bills at that point. So it was pretty bad. The one redeeming factor was that I was really big into charity work. I did it a lot in college. And eventually, before I even lost my job at QuickCom, I was working with the Save the Children Foundation through Gaming for Good, and I had the option to, or I had the opportunity to do a night stream on Athene Live's channel, and doing that, we managed to get over 400 subscribers, which Twitch was giving all the money to the Save the Children Foundation, and the US Aid was matching it 8 times. So every $5 sub was $40 to charity, and we managed to get 400 of those, plus I think later down the line we got some direct donations to the charity as well. And after that, and I had already been doing some Final Fantasy XIV videos, I got to 1,000 subscribers on YouTube, and that's when this kind of began, was through that. And then kind of just dove into it around June of 2013 and said, you know what, I'm just, whatever. I've got nothing going for me right now. You know, I'd already met Mel, my girlfriend, at that point a few months prior in Ragnarok Online 2, and, you know, she was the only thing I had going for me, really. And she was the one who encouraged me to, you know, before Final Fantasy XIV came out, to just, whatever, try it, take the dive. What was the worst that could happen? I had nothing else going on at the time. So, you know, it's thanks to her that this even kind of exists in the first place, all of this. And that we'll probably get into a little bit more later. But then, you know, summer went through, so just kept making videos preparing for Final Fantasy XIV's launch. And then Final Fantasy XIV launched, and we'll get into what happened after that, you know, in the next few questions. So the first question being, you know, life before Final Fantasy XIV. Obviously, my life took a big change after Final Fantasy XIV had officially launched. You know, at that point, I was trying to produce YouTube content full-time, and even started to start doing Twitch full-time. So basically, the brand of Mrhappy was what I was trying to do full-time, and it was mostly focused around Final Fantasy XIV. I know it would seem like it was probably all, you know, sunshine and rainbows after that, but a lot of you who are more frequent on my channel knows that it was pretty far from that. Twitch was a lot harder to get partnered on back then. Obviously, YouTube it was better then than it is now with all the things that have been going on, but it still wasn't something that was super sustainable, so it seemed like I was kind of in over my head a lot of the times. And Mel's the one who pulled me up and, you know, really tried to make me have confidence in myself, and it was a long fight. Because for months and months and months, for years, I straight up didn't have any confidence. You know, I wanted to play games that weren't just 14 because I had other interests, and I felt like I couldn't, because if I wasn't playing 14, I wasn't going to get partnered on Twitch. And so I started to resent the game at times and resent what I was becoming myself, and she had to pull me through all that. So luckily with Final Fantasy XIV itself, I was actually having a good time. it was just when other games came out, I'd be like, no, dude, I can't right now. I can't play it, but I really wanted to. So it was this fight against doing exactly what I wanted to do versus what I felt like I needed to do in order to move my life forward. But with Final Fantasy XIV itself, at least, I've had a great time, even through all the ups and the downs, and the content droughts and the content that flourished and everything. It becomes so integral to my life that even during the low times, I'm still happy for it. I'm still happy to have it. And that's not a joke for the internet to enjoy. I don't know what I would do if that game had never launched, because I don't know where I'd be right now. I don't know if I'd just be working some dead-end job, or if I would have just accrued even more debt trying to go through college courses figuring out exactly what it is I wanted to do. I don't know, but I always wanted to work in video games, and I love talking about video games. As you can see, I love talking. And so it just all it lined up for me perfectly. And I'm so grateful that 14 is in my life, and that I have this, and that because of this, I can provide for my girlfriend, and I can, have my own apartment, and I can have all these things that are mine, and I'm not a dependent anymore. I'm independent, and I'm independent with someone in my life as well. So I mentioned a lot of ups and downs. So that's the next question. What were some of those ups and downs? I obviously mentioned feeling like I was forced to play 14 even during content droughts, because it was the only way I was going to actually get partnered on Twitch at the time. But that's not really the only thing. I grew up in New Jersey, and I grew up in kind of a rowdy environment, and so I was a lot rowdier in my nature back then. A lot of my ups and downs came from just kind of instabilities with me and my perception of events and what the correct way to handle them were. I've said some pretty stupid things. I've done some pretty stupid things. And I've apologized for them, and I'd like to believe it's gotten better. But of course, there's always times where I feel like, did I really make the right decision there? Did I say the right thing? Did I do the right thing? And that's kind of always been the toughest thing for me. That's where most of my downs are. Times where I'm just questioning myself, and times where I definitely didn't make the right decision, or I didn't hold myself to the standard that I thought I was holding myself to, and it began to unravel. Now, some of the ups are just times where I feel like there's a lot of energy and a lot of hype. I'm very parasitic, which is a weird way to describe myself, when it comes to other people around me and their emotions. Like, if there's a lot of positivity, I tend to like ooze positivity. Like, I just absorb it and then I ooze it back out. When there's a lot of negativity, I tend to do the same thing, which is why my ups and my downs are so bipolar in a sense. So I'd say that for the most part, it's been ups. Like, my life has done nothing but get better since then, since Final Fantasy XIV came out. But that doesn't mean there haven't been hardships along the way. And I think that's an important thing that I feel like I need to say out loud, because I almost never really say that. So how did State of the Realm come to be? Oh, man. So I used to do a podcast for a website called Gamebreaker, and they did a bunch of podcasts for a bunch of different games, League, World of Warcraft, and they did one for 14, and they did one for 1.0, and it obviously 1.0 was 1.0, so that show didn't really last, but they brought it back for A Realm Reborn, and somebody brought it to my attention that Gamebreaker was doing this podcast, and there had been no one had publicly planned any podcast for 14 except Gamebreaker, as far as I know at the time, other than maybe like Gamer Escape or Limit Break Radio. They might have been planning stuff already at that time. But I reached out to Burn, Magic Man, and said, hey, I heard you guys were looking for a third host, and I don't want to interject, but I'd like to try out for the spot. And Burn emails me back and goes, dude, I was about to ask you if you wanted to be on the show, so that works perfectly, you're on. And I was like, cool, and I was super nervous, and I didn't know what to do. But we did that for months and months and months, and then it just, Burn couldn't really do it anymore, and I didn't feel like Gary and I were like adequate hosts, so I kind of just dropped the show altogether. About a year later, Mel was saying, why don't you do your own podcast? And I was like, I don't know, I was nervous, I'd never done a podcast before, I don't know how to set anything up, I'm gonna screw up, it's just telling myself I couldn't do it. And finally, Mel convinced me, no, like, really, you should do it. Like, you keep making these excuses, but you really, really need to do a podcast. And I was like, okay, let's try and figure this out. So we auditioned a few people, and Sly was the one that we went with. We felt that he was a great contrast to me, whereas it didn't feel like there was much discussion being had with the other people who had auditioned. So it felt like, even though sometimes he was contrary to me, just for this, it felt like just for the sake of being contrary, at least he wasn't just sitting there agreeing with me. And he was always trying to spark a conversation of some kind. And he also just, as a more hardcore player, it felt like he was the casual player who was in the conversation. You know, he doesn't know everything. He doesn't need to know everything. Just there were so many elements that I felt lined up perfectly. And it may not appeal necessarily to the hardcore players, but I know a lot of the more casual players love Sly's perspective, and that's the main reason why we brought him on. After that, it just, week after week, you know, Mel was the one doing our overlays, and Mel was the one setting up show notes and everything. And then eventually I was able to take on that responsibility and make sure moving forward that everything was designed properly. You know, we had our actual designer do some of the things, and we had and I was the one writing the scripts, or Sly was writing scripts, or things like that. And it just evolved from there. You know, we went a few episodes, we started realizing we wanted guests, we wanted Burn to make an appearance, we wanted Ethis because he was the lore guy at the time, who was, you know, who was like the new lore guy at the time. We had Mary, who was getting popular from Mary's shorts. And then we just kept doing, you know, we did a bunch of different shows. We did a show that Mel organized on couples who play the game. One, Sly and I weren't even on. You know, we just literally had completely different people who weren't us on the show that week, and it went okay. It wasn't the greatest. You know, we had Miz on for an episode. We've had Zeno on recently. We've had Larry. Like, we've had so many guests on, and it's been a real pleasure to do this show week after week, even on the weeks where it's like dead and there's no news, nothing, and we got a bullshit a show. It's been such a great experience for me, because I've been able to bring people together week after week to talk about a game that we love and that we want to see be better and do better, and talk about it. And like, that's what I want. That's what I've always wanted. And I'm glad that it's not stressful anymore, because it used to be so stressful. But now it's just like laid back. Sly and I are just like, all right, we've done this before. No script this week. Who needs it? Yeah, I should really start writing scripts every week again. I don't do that anymore. If there's no news, I'm like, Sly, I'm just here. This is what we're talking about. I don't know. We'll figure it out as we go. That's not responsible. But anyway, just as a little side note, I'm going to talk about this after Host of the Realm is over. But it's now available on Google Play for State of the Realm, by the way. So enjoy. So, reading comments every week for State of the Realm, what is that like? Man, so Sly talked about this on his Host of the Realm, where I kind of took over the responsibility of letting him know if there was something in like the comment section about something that happened, or if it was relevant to the show in any way. And a lot of the times it's difficult reading the comments for State of the Realm over other shows, because on most of my other segments, you know, I'm the only one there. I only have to worry about if people are saying things about me, or people saying things about what I said. But when it's State of the Realm, seeing people talk about what like Sly says, or what Ethis says, or what Mary says, it's hard for me to process that and be like, well, what can I do with this information? Is this even important information? And a lot of the times I just kind of read and I go, wow, why? Like, what is the problem right now? It just feels like, and then sometimes you have like one person who every week that someone's on, they say just the same shit every week. And you're just like, dude, like, I get it. Like, stop commenting the same thing every friggin' week, and it's like the same few people. And it's just frustrating for me, because I know that the other people on the show are reading these comments, and they may not be telling me, but I know that they are, because I'll have a discussion with them at some point. They'll be like, yeah, I was reading some of the comments, and I go, oh, and I know you saw comments that I saw. And some of the comments are downright dumb. Like, they're like, I've seen racist ones for Sly. I've seen racist ones for other guests. I've seen sexist ones when we've had female guests. I've just seen like so much dumb shit in our comment section that, dude, it wears down on your sanity when you see some of that sometimes, man. And, you know, kudos to the fellow guests for still coming back on the show and still talking like those comments don't exist, because I can take my own comments most of the time now, but man, I have a harder time reading other people's comments or comments about them. And it seems like they've got the mental willpower and the strength to push through it. And I'm really proud of everyone who's had to do that, who's decided to come on the show, whether or not they wanted they like, and whether or not they were like confident in themselves and overcoming that and then coming back on the show at times. You know, it's tough, and I'm glad to see that we have so many strong members in our community who are capable of doing those things. So, describing FanFest. Well, I went to both FanFests, and talking about the downs, the first FanFest was, I didn't know how to do that. Like, I tried to shake hands, take pictures with almost everyone I saw, but by the end of the weekend, I had such an emotional toll that it kind of unraveled the whole weekend. You know, I couldn't handle that there was a Reddit thread about me that I didn't understand, that I didn't think happened, and then I couldn't take a picture with 2 people because I was just so emotionally drained that I just kind of broke down in the first FanFest. The first FanFest wasn't great for me. It was not great by any stretch of the imagination. Second FanFest was incredible by every measure of the word. I got to see everyone who had never like been to a FanFest, like all of the people that have grown over the years. I got to see Miz, I got to see Mary, I got to see Ethis, I got to see Sly for the first time in a long time. And I got to see them all like be in this environment and have a good time, and it made me so happy to see other people having fun and being happy, because it felt like at the first one everyone was miserable, just trying to get through those lines, and it felt like despite an expansion announcement, like there was just such negativity in the room. And then in the second one, there was all this positivity, and there was, other than of course some of the merchandise line, everything felt open and less stressful, and it was just way more laid back. And it was just, at that point, everyone had so much more time to develop themselves that I didn't feel like a stranger in a crowd that like just sometimes people would wave at me and say, "Hi, Mr. Happy, can I take a picture?" It was like, it felt like everyone was there, and everyone was kind of there together. You know, people were just, it was just a nicer environment. It's so hard for me to put into words exactly how it felt. But it was just a way more positive experience the second time around than the first time around. You know, the dinners, the drinks, the conversations, you know, I felt like I had more time for people, and I wasn't just rushing from thing to thing because the lines were ridiculous, because I just kind of stayed out of all the lines of the second. You know what? That's why the second FanFest was better. I didn't get in line for anything other than Ultima, and I was like the second group or like the first group to get in. So that might be why my second one was so much better. I literally stood in no lines and I just talked to people the whole time. And for me, that's really what I love about the FanFest experience, is getting to meet people and discuss with them and make people know, you know, I'm not just a, hey, I'm going to take a picture with you and say bye, which is kind of how the first FanFest went. I was like, no, I can sit here and I can have a conversation. And if you see me having a conversation and you're not in it, just feel free to come in and say something, you know? I had to do that a ton of times. Hey, you know, I saw you're standing there and I keep seeing you looking over. You know, I want you to know I'm having this conversation, but you're more than welcome to come in and say hi. You know, don't feel like you're interrupting. It was a way more positive experience for that reason, I think. So, what's next? You know, obviously, you're pretty sure of how things have been since FanFest number 2. What's next is kind of a tough question, because I've said this a lot before, and I don't want to just be a one-trick pony when it comes to Final Fantasy XIV for the channel. But I'm always trying to overcome this fear of producing content that isn't Final Fantasy XIV. Even Final Fantasy 15, which is a Final Fantasy game, because of the controversy around that game. As much as I love producing content for that or Final Fantasy 12, a lot of the times it becomes taxing, and a lot of people just show such like a lack of interest in it. And on top of that, YouTube kind of wants you to do like bait-clicky titles now. Like, what is this? Like, for example, Warrior the best tank now? Question mark. Shake it off buffs confirmed. Like, you got to do titles like that for YouTube to even like consider you in its algorithms nowadays, and it feels disingenuous and fake to do comments or titles like that. So what's next is tough. There's a lot of RPGs coming out, and I really want to solidify doing reviews on RPGs and doing gameplay segments on RPGs. You know, if there's an RPG I'm interested in, I want to be able to put a video out about it and talk about the things that I like about it, or the things that I don't like about it. Or I want to be able to put a guide out for a difficult boss or a difficult part of a game, or a set of achievements, or anything along those lines. Like, I'm rarely ever going to get every video I want done on a single video game. I'm just not efficient enough at it. And maybe that's the other thing I need to work on for what's coming next. Maybe I need to work on being more efficient. But I think the next step for myself should really be to take care of myself a little bit more. I really don't. I wake up at 5:30 every morning. I stream from 7 a.m. to 2 p.m. Pacific. I go eat, or I work on something like this. And then I check YouTube comments, I check Twitter, I check Facebook, and I check there's one other thing I check, and I can't remember what it is right now because my brain is fried. I check comments across all platforms, pretty much. And I try to interact, and I try to do my social media, and then I try to see if there's a script I want to write, if there's some sort of inspirational topic right now, or some news I want to make a video on. And it's by the time I'm done, it's time to go to sleep. And I go to sleep at like 8:30, 9 o'clock, because I wake up at 5:45 in the morning, and there's no time for me. There's no time to go out for drinks. There's no time to grab a bite to eat. And when there is that time, it's very limited amounts of time. There's no vacation time. There's no anything. So I think that's the other thing. I got to start taking time for me. I'm just always have this fear of if I'm not always working, then I'm slowing myself down. I'll have plenty of time to do that later, when I'm old. But dude, if I keep stressing myself out like this, dude, who even knows how old I'll actually live to be. So that's going to be next step, is keep doing 14 content, start working on other reviews and stuff for other RPGs, other videos for other RPGs. And whenever some sponsor stuff comes up, I'll do that too. And then try to take care of me, because I don't do it, and I really should. Final thoughts? I mean, kind of just all what I said already. Thank you everyone for watching this and for enjoying it and for supporting segments like this. I want to do more segments for State of the Realm. Can kind of consider this a wrap up on Host of the Realm, though, since we don't really have many other hosts that are super consistent. Like, we have hosts that we bring on, like Ash or Burn or things, but it's very infrequent. So we may do something else, some sort of community highlight segments or stuff like that, where maybe people who aren't necessarily guests all the time can still get some airtime here on something like similar to a segment like this. But I'd like to start producing more pre-made segments for State of the Realm that dive into stuff that isn't just whatever the latest topic is for the week, as opposed to trying to do a whole show about a certain topic. We maybe have a segment where we interview somebody on a segment, or interview someone for a segment about something that's going on in the community currently. So I'd like to do that, and I'd like to keep expanding the show in other ways. I feel like we've really not expanded the show, or I'll take personal responsibility. I haven't taken the steps to expand the show as much as I probably should have, and that's something that I should definitely get working on. So thank you everyone who supported the show, even through the weeks with the flubs and the no news weeks and whatever bullshit that we're working on at the time. Listen to us talk about dick chariots or whatever it is. It's really made the show much smoother, much more chill, and way more relaxed to produce, knowing that every week we've got people tuning in, and every week we've got people talking about it and commenting on it and asking for improvements or fix this audio or do that, because it means that you care and that you want to keep watching it, and you're only criticizing certain aspects because you want to enjoy the show more, and I want you to enjoy the show more too. But that's a wrap for my final thoughts. Thank you everyone for watching Host of the Realm with me, Mrhappy, the final of the Four Horsemen. And well, I'll see you when State of the Realm, when this is done, because this will be airing during that, and I'll see you in the next video if you're watching on YouTube separately. So thank you, and until then, take care.